This webinar will be focusing on pre-qualification demystified. Please allow me to introduce Project Manager Jennifer Elmore to give a presentation to Merriwether and William Insurance Services.
Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate this. Over the past 20 years, Merriwether and Williams Insurance Services has administered for our sponsor partners a winning combination, enabling small minority, women, and disabled veteran-owned companies to bid on over $980 million in public construction work, while providing over $20 million in contract savings to our sponsoring public entities. The programs administered by Merriwether and Williams differ slightly, but contain all of the following elements. We do an assessment. We do one-on-one consultations to determine your company's individual strengths and opportunities for growth. We offer education like this seminar, specialized classes on all aspects of running a successful contracting business, training by industry experts on public construction best practices. We have a personal account manager to assist step-by-step through the development process, and we provide technical support. Some of the resources that we may offer: when applicable, subsidies for contractors to have financial statements professionally reviewed and put in order by local CPAs, collateral guarantees so that contractors can secure contract financing and bonding or increasing your bonding, assistance with obtaining or increasing your bonding capacity, funds administration to ensure that contractors have solid project funds management and risk mitigation, individualized scope review, project assessment, and field support for program bonded projects, assistance with project risk identification and mitigation. For more information, there will be a slide at the end with our contact information, or you can go to our website at www.imwis.com. And with that, I'm handing it off to our presenter today, John Miller. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. It's Ann Johanna. Thank you very much for those opening remarks. It's a pleasure to be here today. And the idea of being able to effectively pre-qualify with prime contractors if you're a subcontractor, or with project owners if you're bidding direct as a prime, is an essential part of your business development strategy. It's also an essential component of your business model. If you could imagine your business model being broken up into three quadrants, you've got your key activities that you perform as a contractor, you've got your key resources, your people, your equipment, your outside consultants in surety bonding and insurance and in accounting and in the legal fields. Those key resources link up to your value proposition, and embedded in pre-qualification is an opportunity for you to highlight your value to a potential customer based upon the type of questions that are asked in a pre-qualification form. It also translates into how you work with your target market, understanding why the questions are asked the way they are in pre-qualification will give you a distinct hint as to what is important to your target market companies, whether it be, again, a prime contractor or actually a project owner. So with that, we can go to the next slide, please. And we've already pretty much covered those areas, so we'll go to the next. Okay. So why pre-qualification? There's been a great upsurge over the last 25 or 30 years in the intensity and the detail associated with pre-qualification that prime contractors and public entities and project owners are exercising. It's essential to them that they buy work from companies, and we'll talk about this quite a bit throughout the process, but buy work from companies that are well organized in all aspects of their business and have relationships in the areas of bonding and in the areas of available credit that will enhance their ability to not only enter into contracts, but also to prosecute those contracts effectively. From a prime contractor or a project owner standpoint, effective pre-qualification is a risk mitigator across the board for them. And we're talking about operational risks that begin in pre-construction, continue through course of construction, and well into post-construction. So it's very important from their perspective. It's an opportunity for you to, by answering questions in these pre-qualification applications, to clearly identify your skills, your financial position, and your track record. So the overall goal of the pre-qualification process is to ensure that accurate information is compiled and held by your target customers that would otherwise underscore the soundness of their decision to buy work from you. Next slide, please. Now, my colleagues have done a very effective job, both in San Francisco and in Oakland, Alameda, here in compiling a kind of a sample, if you will, a matrix, where some of the first-tier prime contractors that are operating in both of those strategic market areas are represented. We've got in that upper quadrant there, it might be a little hard to see, but on the vertical, you've got Charles Pankow Company listed, you've got Clark, you've got Swinnerton, Webcor, and Turner as examples. And in surveying those companies and key people that are responsible for pre-qualification in each one of those companies, we've come up with this matrix that basically covers the top areas of importance to them in pre-qualifying a contractor. It starts with the questions concerning your safety program. It goes on to look at your trade details and vital statistics about your business, legal details, your legal history, history of litigation, and of course, your ability to obtain bonding and sources of lending. And you'll see here, just using the experience modification rates, each one of those first-tier contractors, on that first line there, it says EMR rates. This would be either your debit or credit modification rate on your workers' compensation insurance. Each one of them is going to ask you what your EMR is. And for small emerging contractors, the statistics associated with your EMR, of course, are lagging statistics. They cover claim severity and frequency over the time that you've done business. So very often, small contractors, small business enterprises, LSBEs as well, are at somewhat of a disadvantage in that they are debit rated on their workers' compensation, but that can be turned around in a period of just a couple of years by operating safely and keeping that frequency and severity of claims down on your workers' compensation. But so EMR is very important. They're also going to want you almost uniformly across the board to be able to produce your OSHA 300 reports, your OSHA 300A reports, and your OSHA 301 reports. Those are all essentially in the form of summaries, and both on a monthly and an annual basis, and then on an individual case basis. So this, we think, is something that provides you with an idea, if you will, of what areas are important to prime contractors and, by extension, project owners in the pre-qualification area. And we're going to kind of now go through and dissect some of these areas, try to give you some tips as to the importance of each one of the areas and what constitutes criteria for these target customers. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. So obviously, as I mentioned, your safety record. Can you demonstrate a solid safety record? Can you produce those OSHA 300s? Do you have a written safety plan? I mean, more detail. There's more detail than what is actually listed in that matrix in terms of the types of questions that you'll be asked. But do you have a written safety plan? And I should say that our contractor development programs, both in San Francisco and in Oakland, Alameda area, we have the ability to work with you and provide you guidelines for developing a written safety plan. Is your safety plan highly adaptable to the overall safety plan that the project owner or the prime contractor has for the project. These are things that are going to be very important to them. And I mentioned before that when you're explaining or trying to put forth your value proposition, even beyond the pre-qualification questionnaire, it's an opportunity for you to explain the importance of your safety program and how it should dovetail well with the needs of your targeted customers. Next slide, please. Okay, so they're going to ask you for a general application and an overview of your business. They're going to ask for what your largest project completed to date has been, the availability of surety capacity, both from a single job and an aggregate program standpoint, the largest volume of projects over a period of time that you have completed, and the largest backlog completed. Again, our contractor development training programs can sort of deconstruct each one of these points, especially when it comes to your volume, because your volume may be your annual sales, but your largest backlog may be your largest, what we call cost to complete backlog at any one time. Those two numbers don't necessarily correlate, but they're a key indicator to a prime contractor or a project owner, just exactly what your organization is able to support. Your project history, goes without saying, needs to be properly described, and it always helps and may even be required to provide references from your suppliers, other primes that you've worked for, any vendor that you have done business with, architects, engineers even, is all helpful in terms of recommendations. And then, of course, along with your application, you're going to include, obviously, your history from a standpoint of your business and your resume, but resumes on your key personnel. Prime contractors and project owners are very concerned about and aware that the success of a project really may depend on boots on the ground. So to be able to describe the bona fides of your key personnel is very, very important. And of course, the number of employees, your standing employees, and that sort of thing is important. Okay, next slide, please. So the previous slide really kind of talks about the background and the organization of your company and the overall capabilities. You're putting forth your capabilities as part of your value proposition. The next is a description of your financial condition. Pre-qualification process is going to ask you for a copy of your financial statement very often. That would be your balance sheet and your profit and loss report. We've also seen the pre-qualification process list, of course, the open contracts you have and what your cost to complete backlog is. They're going to want to know that you have the ability not only to generate this information, but that you understand it and you manage from it. So this is an important component of the pre-qualification process. You would want to accompany your balance sheet with a schedule of accounts receivable and payable, and make sure that that is concurrent with the balance sheet that you provide, along with the work in process. Make sure that that's prepared on a concurrent date. And then they're going to want to know about your bank lines of credit and the availability there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the presentation, because so many SBEs and LSBEs have a hard time obtaining commercial credit. But through our various programs, we do have the ability in some key areas to provide contract-based finance. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as the presentation goes on. Next slide, please. So we talked about the background information on yourself as the owner and the company overall. Other key areas of discovery that they're going to look into is your history on any kind of bankruptcy. I can tell you that our sources of funding for loans want to see any kind of a bankruptcy situation at least 3 years in your past. I don't know across the board how prime contractors view that in terms of time, but you're going to very often perhaps have to disclose and have a discussion with them about anything like that in your history. Any failures in business, which if properly discussed, we had contractors who failed during COVID for reasons of not being able to generate enough volume, but they're now bouncing back and hopefully will be able to survive in a market that is showing an improving trend. So be prepared to discuss that. And then if you've been terminated on a contract, whether it be for convenience through no fault of your own or for cause, there are different degrees of being terminated for cause. So be prepared, if that is part of your background and experience, to lay that out in an effective manner and in the best possible light. And of course, if you've been suspended or debarred from public works contracting, you're going to probably be asked to disclose that and the reasons behind all of that. Any outstanding judgments or claims in your company will be explored. And then any litigation in the last 5 years, and right up there in that matrix that I showed you earlier, there is across the board questions are asked about your history of litigation. There's always going to be some litigation in the construction area, but they're just basically looking for, I would say, a lack of frequency in that category. Next slide, please. Okay, your surety bonding. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but a little more detail on this. We talked about the fact that they're going to inquire as to what your single job capacity is for bonding. They're going to ask you what your aggregate capacity is for bonding. And they're actually, if they do take a schedule of work in process from you, they're going to inquire as to which projects are bonded and which aren't, only to try to verify, if you will, or cross-reference your single bond capacity and your aggregate capacity. Another thing that may be required, but whether it's required or not, it's a great thing to include in your pre-qualification statement, and that's a letter of bondability from your surety company. Now, these letters are in the industry very often referred to as sunshine letters. They're not a commitment to bond you, but they should firmly state that you have a relationship in good standing with your bonding company, and that the bonding company is prepared to entertain future requests for bonding. That's about all any surety company will commit to, and your prime contractors and project owners pretty much know that as well. From an insurance standpoint, you're going to have to provide proof of insurance. General liability insurance, typically limits that are specified are 1 million single loss limit, 2 million in the aggregate on your general liability. Workers' compensation, at least statutory limits for workers' compensation, $1 million. Business auto may be $1 million, but that may also be, you may also be able to just show them essentially what you carry, as long as it meets any state requirements or exceeds any state requirements for auto liability. They'll ask you for a certificate of insurance as evidence that you have insurance in place as part of your pre-qualification. And when you do bid to them and are awarded a project, they're going to ask you for a project-specific certificate of insurance that would name either the prime contractor and or a project owner, and in some instances, the public entity that might be funding a project, if it's publicly funded, as additional named insured. And again, through our contractor development programs, both in the East Bay and in San Francisco, we will take you through all of the ins and outs of bonding, insurance, and move on into the areas of how to obtain credit as a small business enterprise. Okay, next slide, please. They're going to look for verification of regulatory compliance. That was at the end of the little matrix that we showed you at the end, or at the beginning of this, that you have your proper licenses in place with the state of California, that you're properly certified by the Contract Monitoring Division or its equivalent in the East Bay, that you have that you're in compliance with the state of California DIR, and you will provide them with a W-9 form. And some contractors have gone so far as to get a DUNS number, get a subscription from Dun & Bradstreet. That may or may not be present in the pre-qual, but to the extent that Dun & Bradstreet might be surveying your vendors and getting a payment history on you that is then accessible through D&B reports to your targeted customers, that's a benefit to you all the way across the board. Next slide, please. Okay, some prime pre-qualification contacts. I mentioned those first-tier contractors in the little matrix that we kicked things off with. Rachel Brown at Clark Construction would be your contact there. Bianca Johnson at Turner, McPenn at Swinnerton, Candace Conkey at Webcor. These are all folks that even before you prepare your or attempt to pre-qualify formally, these are folks that you can begin to build a conversational, if not a working relationship with, to get to know you and to show you the ropes on how to become pre-qualified with their respective firms. Next slide, please. So I'd like to drop back and talk a little bit about something that is really essential, has become very essential to local business enterprises in the city of San Francisco, and we hope soon will be available to our contractors in the East Bay through another program. The Contractor Accelerated Payment Program, CAP as we refer to it, or branded in San Francisco, was conceived over 10 years ago and actually formalized and launched in the fall of 2019. What we do with the CAP program is provide you much needed working capital in the early stages of a construction project based upon taking primarily your accounts receivable as collateral. The money that we earmark and set aside for you in order to cash flow the project in the early going is designed to cover your direct costs, your conditions detail with respect to payroll, fringe benefits, materials, equipment, project supervision, all of those direct areas of cost that you're going to need to cover in the early going before progress payments kick in somewhere down the road. If you've got payment terms of 30 days, that very often stretches to 45 or even 60 days. So this program for contractors that are capitalized thinly and do not have a commercial lending relationship has become an essential piece of their business strategy, their business model. As I said, the money is released on an as-needed basis. It's dispensed or dispersed through third-party funds administration to cover those direct costs. We also cover on an earned basis your overhead to date. And then once the project is deemed to be profitable, once we're well into it, we can begin to release your earned profit on the project as well. Okay, I think I've covered the points on this slide pretty well. We can go to the next one, please. So, overall, and really this program is designed obviously to demystify pre-qualification, but also to make you aware that there's a very, very well-honed 20-year plus contractor development program through Merriwether and Williams that as an enrolled contractor you can take advantage of. It starts with the first pillar there, an assessment-based technical assistance program where we essentially sit down with you, we assess your strengths, your weaknesses as an organization, your opportunities in the marketplace, what presents a competitive threat for you, and we work with you to provide targeted technical support to enhance your strengths, to address your weaknesses, to further identify opportunities and strategies for taking advantage of those. And when it comes to a competitive threat, just something as simple as being able to effectively pre-qualify, help you with a strategy to get through that process. We can provide bonding and contract financing support, specifically in the San Francisco area, and that is also hopefully emerging in the East Bay for those of you who are representing the East Bay today. We have ongoing seminars like this, but we do workshops in all areas of how to structure your financial reporting, how to essentially develop your business plans, a whole array of workshops designed to help you get organized and properly on track as a contracting firm. And then we have, as is to some degree demonstrated in this project today or program today, relationships with prime contractors. We call it prime contractor partnerships. And we can very often help with those discussions that you're having with primes. And most of the primes in the area, certainly the primes that are listed on that matrix that we showed you, are well aware of our bonding support programs and also our contract-based finance programs and how they work and how they benefit not only you as a borrower, but with third-party funds administration, they all that the funds are being managed effectively throughout the life of the project. Next slide, please. All right, so to kind of summarize things, you know, the nuts and bolts of what I've put forth here today are really in that matrix, and any pre-qualification application or questionnaire that you might get from an individual prime or project owner. But the thing to keep in mind and to keep codified in your mind is that you're going to have to be able to effectively explain your background and the history of your program, okay? Can you effectively demonstrate what your financial position is? Can you effectively explain your financial position? And do you have everything in place, right, ground up from daily job cost reporting to weekly job cost reporting to work in process reporting to those important balance sheet and profit and loss statement reports? Do you understand how all of that fits together and translates into the ability to explain the financial position of your company? By the way, your bonding company and your lender are going to be interested in that area of your company very much in order to provide you with those two tools. And to understand and be able to describe what specific job size and type fits your company best. Prime contractors and project owners are looking to buy work from people who understand where their sweet spot is in terms of the type and size project that they are best at. So keep that in mind. And again, capability of bonding and capability of working capital support. So this kind of summarizes, if you will, hopefully demystifies, at least from an introductory standpoint, what the process of pre-qualification is all about. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I think we're headed for questions and answers here, but our contacts are listed here. I'm John Miller. Jennifer's here. Carol is listed. Johanna is listed. Ken Hyman is listed. My associate in Los Angeles is also listed. But these are your key contacts for accessing development program assistance. Okay. And the next slide, I believe, is questions and answers, and I'd be happy to answer. Any questions that come up from the floor. Okay. Thank you. Do we see any questions popping up there, Johanna?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, I'll pose a question. When is the right time to start the pre-qualification process? The time is now. Whether you have everything fully in place in terms of being able to successfully pre-qualify, you need to understand the rules of the road. So making contact with project owners and prime contractors and getting a working understanding of what is important to them from a pre-qualification standpoint, and taking advantage of the resources that Merriwether and Williams can provide. Okay, there's no time like now to start the process. Everything doesn't have to be in place before you do it. I hear some typing there. Maybe someone's got a question. Okay.
So there is a question. If
Yeah.
you're a new contractor in your first year with limited jobs, is the pre-qualification possible?
Yeah, I think it is. You know, I have had conversations with prime contractors and you know, at the same time with one of our contractors participating in the CDP program. And the prime contractor is basically saying, look, there are a number of areas of our pre-qualification criteria that you don't meet. But you know, there may be a way for us to give you a materials only contract or a labor service agreement or some other, you know, iteration of what would be for them a low risk kind of a scenario. And so, you know, even if you're not able to fully meet the criteria, you may be able to proverbially get, you know, the camel's nose under the tent with project owners and prime contractors. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. There's another question in the chat. Typically, how long does it take to become pre-qualified? How many weeks, month?
You know, I'm going to leave that to specific discussions that you would have with a prime contractor or a project owner. I would tell you that it's a very quick process if you're able to effectively address all areas. I would say a matter of weeks at the most. And you know, part of your business development strategy is to get out there and to figure out what might be on the board for a prime contractor or a project owner, and start your conversations early. And if you're not already pre-qualified, mix that pre-qualification process in with understanding what projects they might have out in front of them and how you might again get yourself involved. Any other questions there?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. Ken Hyman, I think you had asked the question.
That was the question from Ken.
That was okay. That was the question from him. Okay, very good. All right. Well, I'd really like to thank everybody for participating today. You know, we're very passionate about contributing in any way we can to your success as a contractor. The services that we provide from assessment through development plan and to the collateral services where we have them available to us in bonding and in contract-based finance, we look to be able to deliver to you smoothly. So please take advantage of contact with us, and we look forward to seeing you in other programs and workshops. And do not hesitate to pick up the phone and call. We're happy to talk to anyone about what we presented here today and what the big picture looks like. So with that, I'll turn it back to our host. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, John. And I want to remind everyone that a copy of the PowerPoint and link will be sent to your emails. And I want to remind everyone to take the survey. And all the contacts should be on the screen. So if you'd like to take the information down, it's on there right now. And thank you again for coming. And I will end this now. Thanks.